What is up everyone? Today we're going to chat a little bit about backups. Now a little while ago I made a video installing this guy. This is my newest server in the rack. It's called Trenzalore and it's my backup server. It's a little Synology rack station, 2 bays, backs up my slightly larger and slightly beefier newer rack station up here, Scaro. So these guys work together. Most of the data on this guy, all the important stuff gets backed up on a schedule, once a week, different processes run during the night that back up whatever's on here, and I use Hyper Backup and Backup Vault on Synology DSM to do that. I made a full video about everything I just described a little while ago, so go and check that out if you haven't seen it, because this is kind of like a spiritual part 2, if you like. Now, in that video, I also mentioned another system in the rack. I touched on the Mac Mini and the fact that I still use a completely different backup system simultaneously. Now, I want to explain what I do and give a little demo of how I do things in this video, because it did confuse a couple of people. So I've got this lovely new Synology kit. It's very capable, built for purpose. Why am I still using an old crusty external hard drive with a Mac Mini and doing a really kind of janky backup setup down here if I'm doing such a lovely automated backup setup up here? Now the reason for that is just pure redundancy. Now the Synology kit is great, but obviously it's not bulletproof. So if this guy goes down, I lose all my backups. Then I'm just relying on the original source of the files, the original files themselves, which is Scaro. If I've got another backup system on the go as well, I've got a secondary copy of the most important files on a completely different system. So that's one thing. You can never have too many copies. Another cool thing is the backups that I make using the Mac Mini and the external hard drive. They are just plain and simple clones. They're just normal backups, so you can access the files directly from within Finder. There's nothing special about them, nothing complicated about them. With this setup, I use Hyper Backup and I also use encryption. So the files that are created are sort of like backup packages. You can't access individual files from within a standard Finder session or whatever. You have to go and log into DSM to access your backups, and you have to open them via DSM and look at the files and re-download them and retransfer them and things like that. It's very convenient, don't get me wrong. If I need to dive back into a backup, I'll dive back into Trenzalore, no problem. It only takes me 2 seconds. But the beauty of this is, and I was trying to kind of touch on this in the previous video, is the fact that I can take this external hard drive, I'm holding it in my hand, I can connect it to any system, and I've got my files on there. I don't need any special software, I don't need a special server or anything like that, no special networking equipment or anything. I can just get up and running straight away with files that are just stored on a disk, plain and simple. So what I do, this has got far more capacity than this external hard drive, of course. I just take my very crucial stuff and I copy it onto the drive. Now, I've recently made new backup routines to do this, and I'm in the process of kind of reorganizing all of my backups. So it's a perfect time to show you guys this. I use a program called Carbon Copy Cloner. It's a fantastic app on the Mac, and probably loads of you have heard of it and use it. I've used it for well over a decade now for all sorts of different things. It's a very handy utility, really worth the money. But for those of you who haven't heard of it or used it, this video should be quite interesting to you, and for anybody else as well, it should be interesting to see what I do, because I gave a demo of everything I did with Trenzalore, and everything that I did in that video has remained the same. All I've done is added new backup routines, and I'll now kind of complete the process by showing you what I do with my other backup system. So over the years, I've gradually been moving several processes from the Mac Mini over to Scaro, and I now almost exclusively use Scaro for all of my kind of home server needs, but I still rely on the Mac Mini for certain things, and one of those things is providing this automated secondary backup. So let's check it out, see what I do, and hopefully some of you guys find something in this video at least a little bit helpful, because backups are so important. Now, just to explain what's going on here, we've got a screen sharing window open displaying Venus. That's my Mac Mini server, and round here the primary desktop is my main machine, my MacBook Pro. Now, we're going to be focusing primarily on Venus here, so apologies if it's a little bit laggy and whatnot via screen sharing. Let's take a look right away at what we've got going on. So this is the external hard drive that I pointed to in the rack. It's called Vader, and it's connected to the Mac Mini via USB. Plain and simple, nothing crazy going on. So if we actually open this drive and take a look at what's inside, I've got 2 backup routines that run, and they each correspond to one of these folders on the root of the drive. Now, if we just jump in and have a look, we'll jump into the latest folder here for my IMNC exports, and you guys can see all of the YouTube videos that I've exported this month, or last month. It's now September, but this was the month of August on the channel. Now, these are all backup files. They're all secondary backups, so this is the second backup copy that I have of these files. But as you can see, what I want to point out is the fact that this is just a standard external hard drive sat here on the desktop. I can open it up and I can access files instantly. Now, the downside to this is there's no security, there's no encryption. So this method that I'm kind of demoing today is definitely for a home user. You would never ever dream of doing this in a business environment or an office environment, somewhere where you've got a network room or whatever, or even just a network corner in the corner of the office. You would never want an external hard drive just sat on the shelf plugged into a system with loose backup files on it like this, because anyone could just unplug it and walk away with it and then access all of your files by plugging that drive into their machine. But for personal use at home, that's obviously very handy, because I've now got this drive that's completely separate. If I ever need to, for whatever reason, I can just grab it and plug it into a different system. Now, for comparison, let's take a look at my other backup files. Now, in the previous backup video, we spoke about Trenzalore. It was a video all about Trenzalore, and I set everything up there with Synology Hyper Backup. This is what it looks like within the Finder. Now, I've mounted a backup disk that only contains the IMNC backup, and it's a little bit more of a full backup than what I've got in the external drive here, just because the external drive is quite limited in capacity, and I only really store what I deem as essential on this drive because it's only 3 terabytes in size. This guy is my full backup of like most of my IMNC work. That's why it's such a big file. But the difference I want to show you is the fact that these are the same files. This file contains all of the exports, but you can't access them. This is a proprietary encrypted file. You access it via Synology DSM within the server, and this is just files on a drive. This is a proper encrypted backup. So you can access these files via Finder, copy them, do whatever you want with them without any special software or anything additional. This you cannot. It's here, it's a backup. Now, obviously, that system, those systems that I have, the Synology systems, they're running 24 hours a day, they're in the rack, they're plugged in, it's no bother for me whatsoever. But all this gives me here is that little bit of added flexibility for the most crucial backup files. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Now, I use a program called Carbon Copy Cloner to achieve this, and it's a fantastic app. I've actually pulled it up over here. It's currently £31.05. And as I say, I've been using this app for years and years for all sorts of different things. If you're a Mac user and you have multiple drives, or you do anything with hard drives, or even just having it installed is really handy anyway, because the stuff that it can do is brilliant. I'm not sort of reviewing this application or anything today. It just kind of happens to be an application that I use and I love, and I'm going to demo some of the features of it today because we're going to set up a new backup routine. So let's take a little look at Carbon Copy Cloner. It just sits here and does its thing. Now, down the left-hand side at the bottom of the column here, we've got our individual drives. So this Mac Mini contains 2 drives because it's a server edition. This is the boot drive, and then this one is a storage drive. I've just got loads of random data thrown on there. That's why it's so full. But this is where the interesting part happens. If you click on any drive that has a backup routine associated with it, it will display here on the right hand side, which is very handy. Now, before I owned any of the Synology kit, I had many external hard drives connected to my Mac Mini, and I used a lot of routines in Carbon Copy Cloner. So this is a really handy feature when you want to kind of keep track of what drive is doing what what backups are on what drives. You just select the drive here in the column and it shows you exactly the routines that are running on it. It gives you a little bit of a description, when it ran, when it's next due to run, and if there are any problems with that backup, it tells you right there as well. So that is excellent and a feature that I've often used just to kind of refresh myself of what's going on, because the thing is with these automated tasks, if you've got a little network setup that runs 24 hours a day, maybe you set something up potentially 6, 7, 8 months ago and you don't touch it for all that time. It could be even longer. And I don't know about you guys, but my brain just ejects that sort of information. I cannot retain what is stored on what drive without physically looking at it. So this just makes it very easy. Obviously, with only 2 backup routines on one drive, it's very easy to remember. But as soon as you add 3, 4, 5 external hard drives and a whole load of backup tasks, it does get confusing. So up here are the tasks themselves. Now let's take a little look at this family files one. This backs up all of my family photos. Now this is a network share that's stored on Scaro. So let's go and take a little look at that share for a little bit of context. If we jump into Scaro itself and we jump into family files, you guys can see these are just folders within a share on Scaro. Now what I've chosen to do is select an actual backup, an actual volume here, an actual share from that network server, and it's there. It copies all the files from this share. So everything you see here is selected here. I've then selected the destination. Now you can select an entire drive as a destination. We'll see that in a minute when we create a routine. However, I find it helpful and handy to create separate folders within the backup drive. Now this allows you to use the same drive for multiple backups without things getting really confusing. So I created these folders. They're just simply named whatever the backup is, and it means that if you've got a really big drive as well, you can get all of your routines backing up onto a huge drive and just have them all in folders here, which is perfect. So what we'll actually do is make a new folder while we're here, because we're going to be setting up a new backup task. So we'll call this Media CCC Backup. And I indicate that it's a CCC backup carbon copy cloner because it's just another reminder. You know, time can pass and you can forget everything that you've got going, but I see carbon copy cloner there and I'm like, I know that's an automated routine. So maybe I want to store some additional data on this drive and I don't want it to be a backup routine. I make a folder for something else like holiday photos 2002 or whatever I want to store on there, and I see that it's not CCC, then I know it's not a backup task. Because these are just files in folders, it's kind of hard to tell at a glance if it is a backup file or not, although you do have this little folder here, which we'll talk about in a minute, that obviously makes that quite obvious. Anyway, let's delete our imaginary folder for now before we go on any more tangents. Now, this is my family files backup, and like I was saying, this is the destination. Safetynet on. The way I like to think about Safetynet is I kind of like to compare it to Time Machine. It's pretty much giving you Time Machine functionality within a carbon copy cloner backup. Now, if you turn this off, what Carbon Copy Cloner does is it creates a kind of complete clone, a one-to-one backup of whatever is on this drive. But what happens when you do that is if you delete a file on the source, when your backup task next runs, it keeps it synchronized with whatever's on the source and you lose that file. So it's a backup in the sense that this folder always matches the source, which could be what you want for a clone or whatever reason you may want to do that. But with Safetynet on, it gives you that Time Machine safety. It gives you the safety net, just like it just does what it says on the tin. So if I accidentally delete a file within family files, I know that that file will be retained here, and then as space kind of fills up, then those older files will get deleted. Now we can see this working here. It's not as elegant as Time Machine, but it doesn't need to be. Time Machine, in my opinion, was always a little bit of sort of overkill eye candy that just wasted time anyway. With this, if you check out a backup folder, we'll have a look at the family files one, and then we go into the Safetynet folder, you can see them dated. So whenever there were changes, it shows you what changes were made at that point. So it's very, very handy to do this and to just browse to whatever was different at any given time. So that's Safetynet, and I do recommend leaving it on for backups and backup tasks such as I'm doing here today. Now, third, you get your scheduling and when you want to run the task. And there are all sorts of scheduling options in here. You can see mine that are set up right here. Now, possibly daily is a little bit excessive. I don't even run my main backups daily. As you guys know, when I set up Trenzalore, I set them to weekly, so it does different backups on different nights. But this is a lot less data we're talking about here. Between Scaro and Trenzalore, I've got a lot of communication. It can often be a couple of 100 gigabytes that go in between the two. So for this, it's no big deal because it just runs, copies over, 2 or 3 gigs and then job done. What I didn't want to do with the Synology stuff was bog down the systems for hours and just make them work kind of like intensely every night for no good reason really. So I've left that running once a week. These seem to run daily. That's just the habit that I've got into. So that's the scheduling. And then down here, you can set up an email notification. Now this is really good. I've chosen to just receive an email when something goes wrong. Otherwise, you get a lot of emails if you want it every time the backup completes or whatever. Could be handy if you want to do a monthly backup, say, because then it'll be a reminder that your backup has done its thing and you get a little notification of that in your inbox, which is quite nice. But for me, because I run daily, just telling me when I've got errors is absolutely fine. So they're the basic 3 things that you need in order to back up, but they do have some advanced options down here as well that you can dive into. They're on the screen right there. I'm not going to go through every single option. In fact, I don't know what some of them even do, so I'm not going to try, but I rarely need to dive into this section anyway. The functionality just from the top portion of the application here is absolutely fine. Now, before we make our new backup routine, I just want to address this little icon here and something that you probably saw when I selected the task down here for my IMNC backup. Now, this is something really cool about Carbon Copy Cloner. If there's a problem, it tells you exactly what's wrong. You can see that Carbon Copy Cloner detected errors, and you can look in the task history to see exactly what went wrong. Now you can see I've been experiencing errors with this backup for ages and ages. It's been a reoccurring thing, and what it is, folks, is I've got some corrupt files within the IMNC exports that simply don't work anymore. And you can see all of those files listed here. They're all YouTube videos that I've made for the channel. The files, one way or another, by hook or by crook, have become corrupted over the years, and they're no longer readable. I do have another copy of them somewhere. I just need to get around to copying those functional copies over onto Scaro so that this backup doesn't keep failing like this. But it doesn't drag down the whole backup. All it does is it avoids these files, and then it sends me an email to say, Tom, sort your files. It sends me the little warning symbol as well in the subject, so it sticks out like a sore thumb every morning, but it's there, and I do need to sort this. But it's kind of handy that I did have a problem with this backup because I was able to demonstrate to you guys exactly what happens when something goes wrong, which is cool. So one last thing that I want to talk about before we create the backup is the difference between this one and this one in terms of the source. Now this one, as we discussed, is the complete volume that we're backing up. This one is not, because like I was saying, the IMNC share is a very large share and it would take up too much of this external hard drive. I've decided just to copy the IMNC exports folder. So like we saw with the family files, if we browse down to Scaro once again and we go to family files, this is the entire share that's being backed up. Carbon Copy Cloner sees it as a volume, it backs up the whole volume. With IMNC files, this is the entire volume. However, I've only selected to back up the completed exports, which is just this folder here. It's just as easy to do that, and we'll see that right now. We're going to select a folder rather than a volume with the new backup task that we're making as well. And it shows you as well, you get the picture of the folder, but you also get the little picture of the share there as well, and hovering over them tells you exactly what they are. So very convenient, nice interface. Now, Command N, we get our new backup task ready to create. So let's make this backup task. Now what I'm going to be doing today, just for the purposes of the video, and it's handy to have a backup of anyway, is we're going to be backing up my iTunes music. Now I use Plex these days for music, but I still host within the iTunes folder because I still haven't fully let go of iTunes. I keep iTunes running because it streams an Apple TV screensaver photo share over to my Apple TV, but I don't, ever since I got rid of the airport kit, I don't really use iTunes anymore, and I now use Plex on the Apple TV, and I use it via Alexa as well, so that's working out great, but I still have the iTunes folders, of course. Now, let's take a little look at this. This is the destination thing I was talking, sorry, the source thing I was talking about, volumes versus folders. Now, if we wanted to, we could just select an entire volume to back up from, and that's as easy as that. But what I'd rather do is select a folder. So let's just close out of that one and we choose a folder. Now this is where we browse to a new portion of Scaro that we haven't actually browsed to yet, and that is our media share. Now I don't want to back up the entire media share because there's loads of uselessness within this folder. I just want to back up the media itself. I could if I wanted to back up all this iTunes gubbins, but as I say, I don't really use it anymore, so I don't really see that as necessary. I just want the media, and this is what Plex sees anyway. So this is the folder with the media. So let's select that folder, and you guys will see that it's now selected a folder within that share. So it shows you that it's on the media share on Scaro, and it's within iTunes and the iTunes media. So for my other tasks, I'm copying all the files, but for this task, we get to do a little demo of only copying some of the files. Now there's a lot of junk in here as well that I don't want to back up. Don't want these ones, don't want these ones, don't want these ones, don't want that, and it won't back up. Of course, you can continue to collapse the folders and you could further whittle it down. So if I didn't want to copy any of my ABBA songs, I could just deselect, but obviously we do want to copy everything within those 3 folders. It just makes it a really simple backup without any of this extra stuff hanging around that I don't particularly need. If I was still an iTunes user, I'd keep all of it because that would make it really easy to duplicate an iTunes library. But you know, Apple Music and things like that, I haven't even really tried out any of this new music and TV apps and stuff on Catalina because I haven't needed to. So I'm almost completely disconnected from iTunes now, as I say, bar sharing that Apple TV photo share. So that's it for these options. We now get to select our destination, and this is where the folder portion comes in handy again. Of course, you could select the entire drive, but we already discussed the negatives of that. So if we select the folder, Vader, and we can see the new folder that we've created is this media CCC backup folder. So we'll back up to there. Safetynet on for the reasons that we discussed earlier, and then we just choose when we want it to run. It's worth mentioning on this portion as well that you can do this for non-automated and non-scheduled tasks, so you can just create a task and run it once. In fact, that's all I used Carbon Copy Cloner for years when I wanted to copy or clone a drive or whatever. Obviously turn Safetynet off, select a source and a destination, and you're away to go. But for this, we're creating a backup, so we're going to make it daily once again. And for daily, I run one at 1, one at 3, so we'll run this one at 5, I guess. So that's set to 5 in the morning, and we will enable this to defer this task if anything else is running at that time, just in case one of the other ones takes absolutely ages for whatever reason. It probably wouldn't, in fact definitely wouldn't, but still handy to do that. There are other conditions that you can select here, but this is absolutely fine, and that is great. Now I can just enable email notifications. It populates with my email address and we're done. Last double check of everything. Everything is looking good. We've got media to the source, destination. Some files aren't selected. Safetynet on. Let's save that task. And that is a backup task that has now been saved. You can see there's no green tick next to it because we haven't run it yet. We don't have to wait until 5 in the morning. We could run it now if we wanted to. We may in fact do that actually. There's no harm in doing that because I don't really have a lot going on these systems at the moment. But what we do see now is the additional task. So we've got 3 tasks total here associated with Vader. So let's run this task now and we'll be able to see it running. This is something that you'd never really look at. You don't even have to have the carbon copy window open if you don't want to. It just runs in the background and does everything it's meant to do. As long as you set it up correctly in the first place and automate a proper routine, then you are good to go. So I can hear the drives ticking away and I can see the LEDs flashing on Scaro here and on my old external hard drive. Obviously we're doing a clone from Scaro via the Mac Mini to the external drive, and that's going to take quite a while now, but this is of course the initial backup. When it checks at 5 in the morning, if there are no new files, then obviously it just takes a few seconds. It quickly spins up the drive, sees there's nothing there, and job done. If I copy a new item to my library, which is definitely rare these days, it will then at 5 in the morning that night back it up to this external hard drive. So it's nice functionality to have, and it's very convenient, and as I say, it gives me that extra little bit of peace of mind. But as a kind of warning, you will not want to do this in anywhere other than your own home unless you can get the drive behind lock and key, but still it's not encrypted, it is not safe. All of your files are just stored on the drive here. There are encryption options for doing this. You could do this encrypted really easily, but I don't choose to do that because this is one of the conveniences of doing it this method for me. I know that I can access that data really easily, no questions asked. So that's been a little kind of insight to my other backup solution. Obviously Trenzalore is the proper balls to the walls real backup system. This is a little bit janky, a little bit crusty as I say, but it works well for me and I'm glad I've still got it running. So thank you very much for watching folks, and as always I'll catch you in the next video.